So I create a little analogy for Steve Witkoff. So he's talking to the president, and the president says, Steve, you're the best negotiator ever. I'm really impressed. You buy and sell buildings and apartments and businesses. Boy, it's so impressive, Steve. You're just wonderful. But now I have a special favor for you. You won't believe this, but I got a call from the manager of the Washington Zoo, and all the animals have escaped. I want you to immediately go over to the zoo and negotiate with those animals and convince them that they're better off living in their cages. And pretend that animals in Washington speak English.
First of all, I'm very glad to see you all here. Those who doesn't know, you're in Forum Shapira. We're not a cafe. We're a sort of a think tank for, we organize lectures and we invite everyone who's got something interesting to say to us and to the world. That, of course, includes our very distinguished guest, Kenneth Abramowitz, which I try to give a description, and please forgive me if I fail. Right, Kenneth Abramowitz is the managing general partner and co-founder of NGN Capital. He is placed in the Wall Street Analyst Hall of Fame in 2009. He's a supporter and contributor to organizations. Please, Ken, why all the words are 7 syllables now?
It's a long story.
Organizations that are fighting to preserve liberty and to protect America from political Islam and the radical left. Oh yeah. He's a founder of the very famous site Save the West, and I beg you now to take a second, go to savethewest.com and register. You'll get wonderful stuff every week. And with no further ado, please welcome Kenneth Abramowitz.
Please, that's enough. So thank you, Gali. It's great to see everybody here. Can you hear me in the back okay? Yeah? Okay. So I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes, and then we'll have a discussion among ourselves. So think of some questions or think of some things that you might want to say or add to what I say. You cannot correct anything that I said, but you can add. You can add to it. So let me just add something about myself. I am a business analyst. I study the healthcare industry, and I've been doing that for 45 years. I went to business school, and I analyzed. And on 9/11, with the shock of 9/11, I decided to try to analyze national security. Not as a job, nobody asked me. Just as an individual citizen, I thought that I would teach myself national security. And so I worked 6 days a week, and I devoted 1 day a week just to teach myself about national security. Then after 10 years, I wanted to know who did 9/11. Why did it happen? Why didn't we stop it? Why didn't we know about it? It was a systemic failure, like October 7th. So you're not alone with systemic failures. In other words, everybody failed from up there to down there. And so I spent 10 years teaching myself. And then I thought I knew enough, and I started writing one-page articles. Then I realized I knew enough to fill up 2 pages, so I had what we call a duplex on both sides. And then I started writing articles about 10 years ago. And then about 5 years ago, I wrote a book called The Multi-Front War. I was going to call the book How to Save Western Civilization, but my publisher said, no, it's better to say The Multi-Front War. So I wrote a book on the Multi-Front War, and then I updated it 3 times. So I now have my 4th edition. I just published it about 3 weeks ago. It's on Amazon and other internet stores like that. And what I did is I kept the original book and then added a chapter, then another chapter, and then another chapter. So that people can, since I'm in the business of forecasting, analyzing and forecasting, this way the reader, if they want to, can analyze all the 5 years of my thinking and see how good my forecasts are. But when you buy the book, just go right to the last chapter. The last chapter is an update of 20, 25, 26. When I write things, I'm forecasting. I'm not like a newspaper journalist who tells you what happened yesterday. So I'm in the business of telling you what's going to happen next month, next year, 10 years, 50 years into the future. And it's a challenge. I enjoy the challenge of trying to forecast into the future. Now, one thing that I cannot do is I cannot do a forever forecast. When I read the Torah every week, many times there's a forecast from Hashem. I'll give you an example. If you follow the law, everything's wonderful. You'll have fruit, you'll have animals will have babies, and you'll be rich. If you do not follow the law, the land will be desolate, you'll be starving, and your enemies will push you off of the land. Now, I call that a forever forecast. Human beings do not make forever forecasts. So when I read the Torah, I say, that's not a human being. That's not someone like me 3,300 years ago. That's a different level of ability. And in my book, and in my speeches, I learn a lot from the Torah. And there's a few, because one of the things I realized is the challenges that we had 3,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, are the same challenges we have today. And I realized that nothing's changed. So I have an expression, we still live in biblical times. Not officially biblical times, but unofficially biblical times. So if it were not for my reading of the parasha every week, I could not be giving speeches like I give, and I could not write a book. Another thing I learned from the Torah is there's an expression about the Torah, is there's no extra word in the Torah. So when I write, after I write something, I review it, before I publish it, and I take out extra words. I say, if there's no extra word in the Torah, there's not going to be an extra word in my article, and not an extra word in my book. So tonight, when I speak for 20 minutes, if you find an extra word, tell me, because it's there by mistake. I do not expect to put an extra word in. So what I would, and I give about 100 speeches a year or presentations. 80% are to individuals. For example, Knesset members or ministers, or in America, congressmen, senators, governors, attorney generals, and 20% of the public. So I enjoy giving talks to the public, and I enjoy giving talks one-on-one to our politicians. One of the problems our politicians have is it's very difficult to think when every day is a crisis. So I have a little joke of pretend you're fighting a fire and you have a hose and you're going like this. And I walk up to you and I say, Mr. or Mrs. Fireman, I want to discuss the next 10 years of new technology in fighting fires. And you say to me, excuse me, I'm fighting this fire right here. I have a hose and the building's on fire. I do not need your advice about what firefighting will be in 10 years. And so that's one of my challenges that I have, is to get people's attention when they're fighting fires.
You just shout fire.
That's right. My fire is bigger than that fire. Listen to me. So what I'm going to discuss tonight.
The Los Angeles Fire Department, I think, have exactly this problem because they cut their fire, water, whatever, tank management unit, and then when the fire happened,
That's right. Well, yeah, that's right. Well, you have to give the right advice to the right person at the right time and get them to listen. It's not so easy. So what I thought I would do is we'll have some fun tonight. I picked 5 dates in history that I thought would be interesting to look at to explain how we got to today. There's an expression, someone famous said this, I forget who, maybe someone knows. The further you go back in the history, the easier it is to forecast the future. And since I'm in the business of forecasting the future, I find the more I learn about history, I'm not a historian, but the more I teach myself about history, the easier it is to forecast the future. Now, before I give you these 5 dates and the solution or the consequence of these 5 dates, I have to give you 3 thoughts on political philosophy that will help you keep in context the 5 dates that I'm going to mention. First, we're going to be discussing good and evil. Okay, good and evil is one of my favorite topics. And so I have to define good and evil. Because when I call someone good and call someone evil, I want to give you the definition. So there's 2 definitions that I use. One is the 10 Commandments. If someone says, I believe in the 10 Commandments, I say, great, you are good. If someone says, I do not believe in the 10 Commandments, usually it's one or the other. Usually people do not pick and choose. It's not like a menu on a restaurant. So the bad guys reject all of the 10 Commandments. Now, you can convert the 10 Commandments from good to evil in 10 seconds. Just go down each of the 10 Commandments and change the word not. It's not complicated. So it says, thou shalt not murder. So just pretend you can take the word and throw it away. And you say, oh, now I can murder someone. Great. I hope they have a lot of money. I'm going to steal the money. And that's another commandment says, thou shalt not steal or covet someone else's property. Again, take the word not, throw it away, and now you can do that. So that's one definition of evil. Now I'm going to give you an American definition of evil. In our Declaration of Independence, there's a famous line in America, not famous here, but famous line that says the function of the government is to protect the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of everybody. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness for everybody. Now, good guys would say everybody here deserves life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That's what the Declaration of Independence. Now, a bad guy would say, I believe in life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for me. So you all have money, just give it to me, then I'll have more life, more liberty, and happiness. Thank you very much. So the bad guys believe in life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for themselves, their families, and their friends. Call it the 10%. And the good guys believe in life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for 100% of the people, minus the 10% who are criminals. So think of it as life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for 90%, because the 10% gave up their rights to life, liberty, and happiness, versus life, liberty, and happiness for the criminals, the 10%. Okay, so that's the definition of life, good and evil for me. Number 2, when I was 10 years old, I used to play a game. I don't think you have it in Israel. Maybe you do. It's called Careers. Did anyone remember that game from your younger days, or maybe your children or grandchildren? So it's a typical American game. You have to go around the board. But before you go around the board, you have to decide what you're going to be when you grow up. And you have 3 choices. You can be happy, you can be famous, or you can be rich.
Wow, really?
And so when first you have to decide which of the 3 you want to be, and you can do it in different proportions. And then you go around the board and you go into special areas of the board that will make you happy, famous, or rich. So, for example, if you want to be famous, you go to Hollywood and you go to the movies and you're an actor. If you want to go be rich, you go to Wall Street. And if you want to be happy, I'm trying to remember what you have to do to be happy.
Rich and famous.
Yeah, okay, that can be. And but on this game board, they forgot one thing. That's the children's point of view, which is pretty good. But they forgot to mention one other thing, which we're going to discuss today, which is power. What if you want to have power over other people? Power to tax them, power to tell them what to do, power to invade someone else's country that's not yours. So there's a fourth element called power. And then there's a fork in the road. There's good power and bad power. So, for example, America traditionally is a force of good power. Other countries, which we're going to discuss, the evil countries use power for evil purposes, in other words, to take over someone's country. And so we'll be discussing that. And the third issue I want to discuss is the difference between how countries are organized. Big organizations basically have three choices. You can be a democracy, which is a bottom-up, which is we call we the people. We the people pick our elected officials. They work for us. If we do not like what they're doing, we fire them. We have an election, and we bring in a new group of people. The other extreme is top-down. So the dictator says, I know what's good for you. What's good for you is that you give me 80% of your money, and you'll be happy with the other 20%. I decided that that's good for you, and if you don't like it, I put you in jail. So that's the opposite extreme. Top down, the dictator tells everybody what to do, versus we the people. Now, in between these two organizations, both of which have their positives and negatives, are the corporations. A corporation, any corporation you can think of, either you work for one or you buy a product from them, is a combination of a dictatorship and a democracy. So if the president of a pharmaceutical company says, I have this wonderful drug that I created, and it was created through elements of dictatorship and elements of democracy. And I am a big fan of corporations. I think corporations are the right way to organize. I come from the corporate world, and I admire the corporate world because it combines dictatorship and democracy. So I'll give you an example. The president has to make a decision. But if the workers will not produce the product because it's dangerous, just pretend, the president has a problem. If the president makes a mistake, the board of directors above him can say, we do not like your business judgment. I think it's time for you to leave. If the shareholders do not like the growth rate of the company, they could say, I'm going to sell your stock. It's like voting every day. So in the business world, the voters, the consumers, are voting every single day. But in a democracy, they only vote every 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, depending on your system. And in a dictatorship, they never vote. The only way you can vote is try to escape from the country. So we'll also be discussing this theme of democracies versus dictatorship, and corporation being a compromise of those two extremes. So now let me go to the main part of my speech, which is 5 dates in history and what it implies for today. So let's start. Date number 1, these are approximate dates, but date number 1, 3,300 years ago, the Jews are given the Torah on Mount Sinai. And it's summarized in the 10 Commandments. You can remember the 10 Commandments. You cannot remember 613 laws unless you're a specialist, but you can remember the 10 Commandments. So, so I created a little analogy, just imagining that I lived 3,300 years ago. And I'm the chief of staff to a big, rich landowner. Pretend you're a rich landowner. You have all this land, all this property. And I come running into your office and I say, Mr. Big Rich Boss, you won't believe this. The Jews say they got the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai, and I thought you might be interested to know what's in the 10 Commandments. So you say to me, okay, I'm very busy. I'm running a big business here. I have a lot of property. And just pick 3 of the commandments and tell me something about them so I can make a decision. Do I like Jews or hate Jews? So Mr. Big Boss, the Jews say you should not murder. And you go, murder? I murder all the time. How do you think I got all this land? Okay? So, and you can't take someone's property. Why do you think I'm so rich? I murder my neighbors. I steal their property and steal their wives. And that's why I have 38 wives and you have no one. You're my chief of staff. You have 1 wife. I have 38 wives. So but the Jews say you should not do that. You go, what? Who are these Jews? And they say, God told them. And who is this God? And who are these Jews to tell me that I cannot do this? And then the third one, Mr. Big Boss, on the Sabbath, the Shabbat, you should not do any work. Your family should not work. Your horses no work, donkeys no work, camels no work, and even the slaves cannot work. And then you say to me, do you know how much money I paid for these slaves? I have 987 slaves. I paid this amount of money for them. And you're telling me I have to feed them, but they do no work on the Shabbat. He said, that's right, Mr. Boss. And then Mr. Boss says, I hate the Jews. I hate the rule of law. I hate God. And it's like we call it a straitjacket. It prevents me from moving. And so I hate the Jews. And that's the beginning of anti-Semitism. So even though we're proud that we have the 10 Commandments and we're proud about the delivery of the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai, from the criminal point of view, and by the way, in those days, every country was run by criminals, by definition. How do you become king? You're the biggest criminal in the land. So you had all the countries run by criminals, and the Jews say, Mr. Criminal King, I think you should follow the rule of law that God gave us on Mount Sinai. So that was the beginning of anti-Semitism, as essentially all the criminals revolted against the rule of law. Now, you can see nothing much changed in 3,300 years, but I thought that would be one good date to look at. So now let's go to well, just to finish this, then around 2,000 years ago, Jesus, a nice Jewish boy, said, and particularly his followers, said, we have wonderful ideas here, but it's too difficult to communicate to people. So why don't I make it easy for people to become Christian? To become Jewish, you have 613 laws. It's too much. So why don't you just go into some water and come up and I'll make you a Christian. So there's a reason why there's 2 billion Christians and 16 million Jews. It's a lot easier to become Christian. And but together, the Jews and the Christians, although we've been fighting dysfunctionally for 2,000 years, together we built Judeo-Christian culture, history, philosophy, principles, and we created the most successful culture ever in the history of the world because it was based on the rule of law. And once you have a rule of law, it's easier to play a game, or live. So pretend, by the way, take it your favorite sport, basketball, football, does not matter. Everyone has a court or a play field like this. What if I told you there's no boundaries? Just go play basketball. There's no out of bounds. You can take the ball home and when everyone's sleeping, come back and put it in the net. You cannot play a basketball game, baseball game, any game without rules. Well, it's the same with life. Life is full of rules. There's a lot of flexibility within the rules, but there are rules and you have to follow them. Otherwise you get chaos. And the dictatorships are basically chaos, professional chaos. And the democracies theoretically are the rule of law. Now, democracies are not perfect, right? But I'm just talking in theory. Democracies have rules, just like football games, basketball games, and dictatorships have no rules and chaos. So let's pick another date. Let's go 1,400 years ago. roughly the year 630 to the time of Muhammad. So Muhammad and his followers were in Saudi Arabia, and they made the decision that everybody in the world should be Muslim. Over the next 100 years, Muhammad's followers took over about 55 countries, 20 Christian, of which 20 were Christian countries, and basically killed anyone who didn't want to become a Muslim in 3 seconds. By the way, October 7th, they didn't even give people 3 seconds to say they wanted to be Muslim. They just did what they did. So I color code the bad guys into 3 color codes: the reds, the greens, and the blues. So the greens are the Muslims, but not all Muslims. I'm talking about the Islamists, the Muslims who want to impose Islam on somebody else. And so that was 1,400 years ago. And then about 100 years ago, the Muslim Brotherhood took the wisdom, so to speak, of Islam and said that we have to impose Islam on everybody. We used to do it 1,400 years ago, and then we forgot. Or at that time, people fought back. The Hindus fought back. Even the Christians fought back in the 1400s and the 1600s. And so the Muslim Brotherhood out of Egypt revived Islamism, which is the imposition of Islam on other people, which is illegal, should be illegal. It actually is illegal in Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and Egypt. It's just not illegal in the Christian countries, which, you can't make this stuff up. But you cannot walk up to someone on the street and say to them, are you Jewish? Or are you Catholic or Protestant? And say, if you don't become what I am, I'm going to kill you. You go right to jail. You should go right to jail. But you do have the right to be a Muslim, of course. You just do not, just like any Jew or Christian, but you do not have the right to impose it on someone else. So Islamism should be illegal and should be opposed. And yet the Muslim world has 2 billion Christians, all imposed, 2 billion Muslims, all imposed by force. And now there's 2 big Muslim Brotherhood countries. We have Iran in 1979, which promptly declared war on the world. And then we have, more recently, in 2013, the government of Qatar, which represents the Sunni Muslims. We have Iran representing the Shiite Muslims. Both of them I call Islamo-Nazi death cults. And they both want to take over the world. There's a famous expression in terror literature: Christians, Jews, and Hindus will convert to Islam or we're going to kill them. Both Qatar and Iran would agree with that. And they try to implement it. And we saw the fruits of that on October 7th. And in America, we saw the fruits of it in 9/11, which is what started my national security career as a concerned individual citizen. So now let's go to a third important date in history. Now we're going to talk about the Reds, the communists. In 1867, Karl Marx published his famous Das Kapital, now before him there were other authors, but I just picked that date as the day of communism. And this is another authoritarian death cult. The Russians and Chinese have killed, something like 100 million people, imposing their communism. The Muslims have killed hundreds of millions of people. I can't count that high, over the 1,400 years. And that led to 1917, when Lenin and his criminals illegally took over Russia. And then in 1949, when Mao and his criminals, I guess you could say they legally took it over, there was a civil war and the communists won. And that led, now we have 2 countries dedicated to taking over the world and eliminating capitalism, free markets, and imposing dictatorships. So that's the Reds. And then we come to the Blues. The blues are the globalists. I color code them blue for the color of the United Nations. When you see a United Nations soldier and he has a helmet, he's not doing anything, but he does have a helmet and it's blue. So that's the globalists. That's the UN, World Economic Forum, drug cartels, and certain social media companies. These organizations have a worldwide view. They do not accept the right of individual countries to exist because they say, well, the people in Israel are too stupid to make decisions. So I sit in Geneva or New York, and my people, my staff, who are so smart, will make decisions for Israel. We'll tell Israel what its borders are because the Jews are too stupid to know what their borders are. And I'll interfere in the World Health Organization. I'll tell them how to behave in the next COVID that comes from China as they try to kill everyone in the world. And that started in 1923 with the League of Nations, and then 1946 with the United Nations, and then in time, in 1993, became the EU. EU is like a regional version of the United Nations, whereby 27 countries, there was 28, but England left. In the 27 countries, basically the globalists said, well, you stupid people in France, you do not know how to govern you, so we'll do it in Brussels because we're so smart and you're so stupid. Same globalist elitism that we call. And the EU has been a big failure. By the way, every organization run by Greens, Reds, Greens, and Blues is a failure by definition because they're top down. The only chance of a successful organization is bottom up. And as I discussed with corporations, corporations are compromised. They're both top down and bottom up. And that's why they function. But just democracies, bottom up, dictatorships, top down, dictatorships always fail. So there's no future for the Reds, Greens, and Blues. They don't know that yet, but there's no future for them. Now let me go to the fifth and final date. Let's go to 1995 in Israel and 2008 in America. Those were very important dates, and those are the dates of the counter-revolution within a democracy. So let me explain. In 1995, roughly, the president of the Supreme Court, Aaron Barak, made the decision that politicians are too stupid to make decisions. Sure, they were elected, but they're not smart like lawyers like us. And so therefore, the Supreme Court and its affiliated attorney generals should be making decisions, because we're smart. We'll make decisions for the stupid Israelis. Even though they were elected, it's just a small detail. And that was a judicial coup, illegal coup. And the Supreme Court took over the management of the country. And remember I said, any dictatorship is guaranteed to fail, but by definition, always fails. The only question is how long do they last until they fail? Well, the Supreme Court failed on October 7th. The Supreme Court was running the country, and they bear the #1 responsibility for October 7th. When I talk to friends, I wrote an article on this, but talk to friends, say, who was responsible for October 7th? It's the same, it's like asking who was responsible for Pearl Harbor? Who was responsible for 9/11? Israel's not the only country to go through a systemic failure. Now, the real answer is from here to there, and everyone in between, 20 different organizations were responsible for the failure. But everyone wants to say, but just give me one name, one name. Now, most people would say, oh, the prime minister is responsible. And I said, but the prime minister is not running the country. The Supreme Court's running the country. And there's an expression, the captain of the ship goes down with the ship. So the Supreme Court bears the responsibility. And whenever there's an investigation, if it does not come out that the Supreme Court bears the #1 responsibility, you know that it was a phony investigation. Now let's go to 2008. 2008 was a systemic failure in America. I already mentioned 9/11, which was a failure. But 2008, President Barack Hussein Obama became president. Barack Obama was a foreign agent. He was a Manchurian candidate. There's a famous book and movie about Manchurian candidate. Here it was, right out of the movie, right out of the book, right in front of our eyes. He represented the Reds, the Greens, and the Blues. He was part communist, part Islamist, part globalist. So he represented all of our foreign enemies. So the question, why did we elect him? I mean, it's a democracy, remember, bottom up. So if I said to the people, vote for me, pretend, I'm running for president, and I represent the reds, the greens, and the blues, all of your foreign enemies, and I'm going to impose the foreign enemy's ideology and policies on you. You'd say, call a psychiatrist, this guy needs help, okay? Well, we never should have elected him. But before that, why was he able to run? And the reason is, and Israel has the same problem, there's no national security clearance required for politicians. Now, if you want to get a job in the foreign ministry or Ministry of Defense, whatever, you have to, they look into your background, maybe a lie detector test, but there's a team of people who do national security clearances. But in America and Israel, there's no national security test required for politicians.
But that's got very good reason, because you can't trust. What procedure will you have to trust the people who are running the procedure?
That's right. So, and also, if you have bad guys running the procedure, all of a sudden, the good guys will fail national security. So, for example, when President Trump became president the first time in 2016, he had his national security advisor was Michael Flynn, General Michael Flynn, who is a big a patriot, as you ever find. And he was denied national security clearance. And I said, uh-oh. The people running national security clearances are the reds, the greens, and the blues. In other words, our enemies have penetrated the government and did not want a real patriot to have a national security clearance. And that's the problem, is that
the clearance usually would be the press, for example. They will follow what the elected person has done, and they will tell the public. But once the media was kidnapped, so you don't have a clearance anymore. That's right,
right. So because of all these issues that I mentioned and you mentioned, a foreign agent like Barack Hussein Obama became president and created massive damage to the country. Every day we're paying for the damage, and Trump is basically trying to fix the damage that Obama created over 8 years. So now let me conclude in 2 minutes, and then we'll have some questions and discussion. And so what does all this have to do to today? Okay, I just gave you 5 important dates of history. What does it mean for today? The importance for today is that we've been losing to the reds, the greens, and the blues for hundreds of years. We've been losing to the reds since Karl Marx, false narrative of Das Kapital. So that's 175 years. We've been losing to the greens for 1,400 years with Muhammad and his false narrative. And we've been losing to the blue internationalists or globalists for 100 years. So I think it's time to win. I think we the people, our democracies have to start functioning at a much higher level. Now, one of the things that is helping Israel, I hate to say this, is October 7th. In other words, when you have a tragedy of October 7th, or when America had a tragedy of 9/11 or Pearl Harbor, then the democracy says, do something, save us, get the bad guys, put them in jail, kill them, blow them up. The trouble is the democracy doesn't maintain that fervor forever. And after a while, people get tired. Oh, the Gaza war has been going on almost 2 years. Let's end the war. That's enough. Wars end when good guys win and bad guys lose. Wars don't end. Well, they can end when the bad guys win and then you're all dead, right? So we, the West, have to learn how to win again. We knew how to win, not we, but our parents, grandparents, knew how to win in World War II. We, the people now, we have to help educate our government to win today. Israel, representing the Jews, America representing the Christians. America is 90% Christians, Israel's 80% Jews. It's finally time for the only two countries in the world that function properly, even with all our problems. We're the only two that I would say are successful democracies. Although I'm glad to see Argentina is under new leadership is becoming normal again. And so if Western civilization is to be saved, it's because Israel and America saved it. And to be more specific, Netanyahu and Trump saved it. And to be more specific, they save it during the next 12 months. The next 12 months will be critical to the survival of Western civilization. And the reason I say 12 months is there's elections coming up for both in about 12 months. In America, we have what we call midterm elections, and we vote for senators and Congress, but not for president. And right now, the Republicans are in control of the Senate and the House, but they can lose control over the Senate and House. And then it's very difficult for a president to be president when he's not in control of both the House and the Senate. So President Trump has 1 year to be maximum effective. Now, hopefully the Republicans win the Senate and House, and then he has another 2 years, but you don't know that. The only thing you know today is he has 1 year. Now, for Prime Minister Netanyahu, it's somewhat similar. He has an election coming up within a year. It always can be sooner in Israel, but let's just pretend it's in a year. So he has 1 year to show that he can be a great prime minister, just as Trump has 1 year to show that he can be a great president. So their interests coincide for the next 12 months. So both of them have to do whatever is necessary to win. And together they can do it. And we saw the seeds of it since October 8th, not October 7th, but the seeds of success were in October 8th because of the fighting of the Israelis. But remember, behind Israel, 65% of weapons to Israel come from America. So even though Israelis are doing 96% of the fighting, America is doing 65%, selling 65% of the bombs. And together, I call it a joint venture between Jews and Christians, between the two great democracies, to save Western civilization. And this is the year to go after all of the bad guys. Now, just as a little tangent, did anyone here see the movie The Godfather? The Godfather? Okay, it was a famous movie, I don't know, 30 years ago or whatever. And when the son took over after the father passed away, and he became the new godfather, he went after the 5 enemies of his father. And in the last 5 minutes, his guys went boom, 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 boom. So we're at a Godfather moment when Netanyahu and Trump basically have to go after our enemies. Boom, 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 boom. Now, how do you do it? How do you do it? By the way, you cannot just blow up everybody. Even though I say boom, 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 you cannot blow up everybody. I mean, you have the Reds, for example, China and Russia. We're not going to blow up China and Russia. Okay? The Greens, Iran and Qatar, we actually can blow up. Qatar, you can just take over in 3 hours, just walk into the palace and say that it's mine. And Iran is half blown up, and the other half will be blown up before the year's over. And Hamas is going to get blown up. Hezbollah is getting blown up. The Houthis are going to get blown up. So for Israel actually is going to have to be like Michael Corleone in the movie and go boom, 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 boom to all the enemies, because in the Middle East, there's no non-military solutions. You have bad guys, they either kill you or you kill them. And so the Green War is different than the Red War. The Red War, China and Russia, is not a military. There it's more of a cultural war. And in other words, war of words, war of narratives, rather than a war of guns and bullets. And the Blues War, again, you're not going to blow up the United Nations and the World Economic Forum. But again, that's also cultural warfare. And Israel and America have to become much better at cultural warfare. A typical country, like a typical democracy, is terrible at fighting cultural wars. Dictatorship are great because dictators have the minister of propaganda, like a Goebbels, or son of Goebbels, grandson of Goebbels, and they lie all the time. We, the good guys, tell the truth all the time. So I have a theory that we have to fight the lies of the bad guys with the truth. You can do that, but you have to have very strong leadership. And you would have to have someone comparable to the bad guys leading the charge. Now, in every single democracy, there's a minister for everything you can think of. And in America, we call them secretaries. So secretary of everything you can think of, except one thing. Who's the minister of cultural protection? You could also call a minister of Hajra. You could call a minister of policy coordination. You can call them minister, spokesperson of Israel. But I'm talking about a very high-level person. I'm talking about taking the smartest person in Israel and put him in that job, not just a normal, good person. So, for example, I'll give you an American analogy. In America, on our television shows, we always see Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House, and we see Mark Levin. Now, these are two of the smartest people in America. So if President Trump were here, I would say, hire one of them and make them minister of a secretary of a job that doesn't exist. Secretary of Cultural Preservation. Let them play defense half the time, offense half the time, just like a basketball game, and start attacking the enemies. Instead of calling Hamas terrorists, call my favorite word, Islamo-Nazi death cults. And step up the rhetoric. Never use the word Palestinian. I just saw a YouTube with the prime minister. Oh, the Palestinians do this. I said, I don't even know what a Palestinian is. He's telling me the Palestinians are doing something. So these are people who are experts at words, using the right words, not the wrong words, and attacking the bad guys. So Israel needs a ministry, a high level minister of cultural protection, and so does America. You wouldn't call them that name, but someone who represents the culture and can both answer questions and attack, not physically, attack verbally our enemies. So to finish, the next 12 months will be a combination of physical war, mostly led by Israel, and cultural war, led by Israel and America. But the missing ingredient, which I've been hoping for, is a very high-level person in America and Israel to lead the charge, because the prime minister is great and the president is great, but prime ministers and presidents have 1,000 things they have to do. They have to designate one person to say what Israel believes. Of course, Israel has to decide what it believes, but you need one really strong person, probably like the smartest person in the country, to lead the charge. So I'm hopeful that during the next 12 months, I should mention, if that doesn't happen, there is an alternative. Is beneath the president or prime minister, there's 10 people who have a role to play in cultural warfare. The foreign minister, for example, the defense minister, the Speaker of the House, the Senate Majority Leader. There's many other people within government who, if they stepped up their game, they could act together like this mythical minister of culture. But in the absent that, Israel's just going to have to fight its way out of this mess with American weapons. And over the next 12 months, I expect both countries to be very successful. Basically, I hate to say this, blowing up the bad guys. There's no alternative. Either we blow up the bad guys or the bad guys blow us up. So I'll stop here. And that's my quick summary of where we are today. It was a pleasure to be able to address you today. So does anyone have a question, a favorable comment, or anything else they want to mention?
I will start with that. The bad guy are not sitting quiet. They are working. as we see now, all this, for example, this campaign of propaganda of starving of Gaza, it's active campaigns from the Hamas and Qatar sponsorship to stop to try to stop the mission to complete to finish the Hamas, and I hope it will not succeed, and I don't think it's really succeed, but it's have some partial success and very strong one. So as you said, this kind of very important high-level person that need to lead the fight on this campaign.
Well, I monitor 7 forms of warfare. Most people think war is like bullets. So that's correct. That's kinetic war. But it's what we call kinetic war. But it's only one form of warfare. You can also fight with chemical and biological weapons. For example, the Chinese killed 1 million Americans with COVID and 1 million with fentanyl opioids. And there's no discussion in America why 2 million people are dead. Because it was hidden by the newspapers. You can fight a cultural war, which is what we've been discussing. You can fight an economic war, in other words, with boycotts, dollars, shekels. You can fight a legal war, also known as lawfare, International Criminal Court. You can fight a demographic war. What's going on in Syria right now is a demographic war. The Sunnis are trying to kill the Jews, the Christians, the Alawites, and the Kurds. And you can fight a cyber war. So those are the 7 forms of warfare. Now, each of the 7 forms of warfare is managed by somebody. It could be a general, it could just be an official, but there's no manager of cultural warfare. So an analogy I have, pretend you ran a business and you sold 7 different products, okay? And product number 3 is not doing well. The other 6 are doing, the sales are going up. But number 3, the sales are going down. So I say to you, Mr. President of this company, why are sales doing so poorly in product number 3? And you go, oh, I have no management. Well, what do you think is going to happen to product number 3 if you have no president of the product line, no vice president? Of course it's going to fail. So our cultural war is guaranteed to fail unless someone steps up. Either the 10 people under the prime minister or president, or that the president or prime minister appoints one person and say, you are my spokesman. And I'm going to help, I'm going to tell you what to say. And 2, and you would think that it would occur to the prime minister or to Trump, they're both very smart people, it occurred to them that they're missing this person, but they each think, I'm just guessing, they each think that they're the best spokesperson for the country. And they'll never find anyone as good as me as a spokesperson. And that's why they did not appoint a spokesperson. So in that case, if they want to be the spokesperson, they have to step up, we say step up their game. They have to be much more aggressive and attack and attack and attack. Yes. Attack with words. I'm not talking about attack with the idea.
If God forbid, the war against the West will be lost on the side of the West, we now have 3 major powers that has got nothing together, nothing to do with each other together, besides their common fight against the West. So what
against the rule of law.
Okay.
It's just out of biblical time.
But if, God forbid, they win, what would happen immediately after will be a terrible war between all those 3 new powers over the domination over the whole world. We will all be the victims. So what I think, if you got the most, the cleverest man to do this ministry of propaganda, first of all, I suggest that it would be you, will nominate you a minister of propaganda for Israel-American alliance. But I suggest we pick up someone even smarter to start the wars now between all those 3 agents of the alliance, So to put the trees between them today, as long as we've got the force to fight each one of them, because there's nothing in common between the progressive blues and the Islam, and both of them, it's nothing to do with Marxism.
Yes, but there is one unifying factor behind the reds, the greens, and the blues. There's several unifying factors. They hate democracy. They hate the individual. They hate God. They hate the rule of law. And I have one word that describes all of them. They're pagans. What's going on now is a biblical war between Hashem and the pagans. That in the Torah, they're called Amalekites, or Canaanites, or Perizzites, many different names, Midianites. Okay, now we have the names that I went through. It's the same war of Hashem versus the pagans.
But then I think we were clever enough to put to make them fight each other, all the pagans each other.
Also, we had the greatest leader of all time. I think Trump and Netanyahu were like wonderful, but they're not Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, so we had the best leader at the time, and no one has come close to. Now he had help from above, okay. So, but he was everything. In fact, he was too much. I mean, the responsibilities. But he was basically a benevolent dictator, and he took power and used it for good. Nowadays, 99% of the bad guys, or 100% of the bad guys, take power and use it for evil. And but he was the best spokesman ever. I mean, the reason it's called Moshe Rabbeinu, right? He was the teacher. So I want Trump Rabbeinu and Netanyahu Rabbeinu. I wish they could divide responsibilities because it's so much responsibility on one person's shoulder. But if they're not going to hire someone, then they have to be in the press all the time. They have to be, now you can do it with YouTube. You do not have to rely on some reporter. But Netanyahu picks very good reporters and gives them interviews, which is I'm very happy to see. And it makes the interviewer look good. It makes Netanyahu. Trump does the same thing with different smart people. So both of them are playing the role of cultural leader. I just want them to talk more often because the people need so much education. Yes, young lady?
Okay, what I would like to say, and I wouldn't be saying this in a room full of leftists, okay, so that's, is that Netanyahu's severe weakness, aside from thinking everybody else is a pygmy next to him, and which most are, that's true, but he plays the too clever by half game with the blues, okay? He is the one who chose Aaron Barak to go to the criminal court at The Hague and represent Israel. It was disgusting. I thought it was appalling. And even my conservative...
I know why I did that. Because Aaron Barak is one of them. He's not one of us.
Which is why he did it thinking that that's clever. The cleverness, even I heard from fellow conservatives, oh, no, that was really smart because he's one of them, because he's one of them. It was totally stupid. And not only that, but then he stuck it to us by voting twice against us. So, and I'm using that as an example. Do you think that Netanyahu is going to have a cultural this? He selects people in positions, let's say appointees, to represent Israel abroad, the people he wants to get rid of, not based on merit.
Prime Minister Netanyahu made two mistakes. You only mentioned one. The second mistake he made on this issue is he didn't call me for advice. I would have told him to send Mike Tyson. Can you imagine Mike Tyson at the International Criminal Court?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Say what
Sorry, yes, go ahead.
Okay. Netanyahu, what you're saying is that you don't like the fact that Netanyahu is human. But this is a restriction that we have to live with. Anyone that we will put as a leader will be human. Okay?
Of course.
Okay. So, and there are many things, you know, I always see that there's a spectrum of what you can do. You can be very passive, you can be very aggressive, right? It's very easy to find people who would like to be on other points of this spectrum. So when you choose one point. And advantages, you can show advantages from many points. And it is so easy to attack him, okay? When you have all this willing media that wants to attack him, they just show the advantage of being on other points. But when you have to choose, you have to choose. And he does have more information than we do. And he has more restrictions that he can admit.
You're right, we all love him. That was a stupid decision.
And by the way, let me just say, I write articles, 3 a week. And I spend most of them defending him and saying exactly what you're saying. Here, what I'm trying to do is say, yes, but let's not be under illusions. I think he's doing a great job in many ways. He has the hardest job. He's fighting on many fronts. That doesn't mean that, but I'm talking about tackling a certain thing that is also really affecting Israel. The onslaught of the media, the blues are taken over, and as you say, it's not just the Supreme Court. The media, they are treasonous. They are going against the war. As I said, I'm sympathetic to him. But when it comes to his selection of people for different jobs, there I'm extremely critical. I never write about it because I'm not joining the anti-Netanyahu chorus. I won't do it. But but it is a fact. That's it. As I said, I will never write that, and I wouldn't say it with anti-Netanyahu people.
Honey, you just said it to millions of people. It will be on YouTube.
At the moment, I think we also have to fight a battle that maybe less than half the country, but the really loud half are doing everything to sabotage victory in this war, to sabotage judicial reform, to sabotage everything. And that's why I consider them traitors. I know you're not supposed to say that, but I do.
No, traitors.
They're total traitors.
What was the problem we had with Obama? Obama represented the Reds and the Greens and the Blues. He never represented America, never cared about America. Every time, in Biden, same. But Biden wasn't really president. Obama was president during the Biden term. And we had a third term of Obama. Every decision they made, every time it was a decision I see on the internet or news, I say, oh, that's good for the Reds. How about me? Oh, that's good for the Greens. Yeah, how about me? Oh, that's good for the Blues. What about me? They never made a decision that benefited me or we the people. It was always representing our foreign enemies. But no one ever accused them of treason. So I'm very proud of President Trump. And his people, Tulsi Gabbard, who I didn't have a high opinion of, she's been rising in stature in my mind. When he says what was going on in America was criminal. America became evil. America, the best country in the history of the world, during the 2 Obama terms and then the 3rd Obama term, they converted us to a criminal organization. I used to have a joke at the time. What's the largest criminal organization in America? It was the federal government. Okay, so Trump is saving us from these criminals who took over our government, representing the Reds, the Greens, and the Blues. It was pure treason. But no one wants to mention that word because it doesn't sound nice. But the bad guys never bothers them when they call people bad names. So we have to learn how to call bad people bad names and be proud of it. Because we're telling the truth. Yes, another young lady?
In my opinion, both are inalienable rights.
Wait a second.
Has been just hijacked by Islamists, but also liberal media. And I'm just wondering, how do we hold on to our inalienable rights and our freedom of speech in our free world? I'm so frustrated with it, as we were discussing it all in the car a little bit, on what's happening here, especially in Israel, with these traitors. And I keep using this word traitors all the time, and I'm wondering why I don't hear more of that. But really, it's just unbelievable, like our inalienable rights and our freedom of speech. And everyone's like, oh, well, that's freedom of speech. I'm like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I guess it's freedom of speech. And then I feel like it's the pandering leftists, and they're weakening us more and more, and they're using that which makes us so strong with integrity absolutely against us. And how do we keep that balance?
Yes. Well, there's a problem in our laws. And a couple of years ago, I heard a speech in the Palm Beach area, and some important lawyer was giving a talk about this issue. And I introduced myself. I set up a meeting with him a month or so later. And I said almost exactly what you just said, okay? And he said, I said, how can we allow incitement? Because bad words, what I call cultural terrorism, leads to physical terrorism, and we can't allow that. So when someone says Christians, Jews, and Hindus are the sons and daughters of apes and pigs, I didn't hurt anybody, right? Or so shouldn't that be illegal? He said to me, he started laughing. He says the only time incitement's illegal when you incite someone for something immediately right now. So he said, paraphrasing, if you said Jews are sons and daughters of apes and pigs, and we have to kill them like right now, this minute, he says that's against the law. But he says if you leave it vague, that Jews and Christians are sons and daughters of apes and pigs, he says you don't go to jail for that. I said that's wrong.
But is it illegal these days? Because look what's happening in our streets. Is it illegal, really? That incitement is actually happening, and it is taking it to the next level. It is inciting the violence. The violence is happening, yet still this is allowed to be.
But we don't know how to stop it. I know how to stop it. But we as a society don't know how to stop it. We have to start criminalizing this and start putting people in jail.
We lost the common basis of what is good and what is evil, because the progress has turned everything good to bad and everything bad to good. And now, you're paralyzed, because if we don't know exactly what would be the borders of the discourse. When is it incitement? When it is too evil to be said? Because the other side, which is almost half, it's half and half. The other side think everything that we are saying is evil. And I think that's the biggest tragedy, and that's where we lost the cultural war. The fact that we're living with each other in the same place, in the same national country, and our intuitions of what's good and what bad are completely the opposite.
Well, it reminds me about 8 years or so, Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House at that time in America, publicly said, I think half of the people in this country need to be in re-education camps.
Yeah.
So I heard that, and I said, yes, I finally agreed with Nancy Pelosi. We just disagree as to which Or take a worse example of a terrorist. The 23-year-old terrorist blows somebody up. I know that the police are looking at today. What was the motivation today of that terrorist? Why did he do that bad thing? I look, just as an observer, what happened over the previous 22 years? Who was educating that young child, that medium child? What school did he go to? What a mosque or other religious institution did he go to? Those are all guilty too. One easy thing to do, if I were a president or a prime minister, is to take 10 words like that and criminalize them. Say, you cannot use those words. Those words are considered incitement to death or incitement to genocide, and we're not tolerating this. You'll go to jail for those words. So, for example, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Well, why don't you complete the sentence?
Genocide.
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free of Jews and full of terrorists. So that should be criminalized. Anyone who says that, that's an incitement for genocide. They should go to jail for that.
Right.
And then you could pick 10 other like that. And so when now they'll invent another 10 slogans, and then you criminalize those 10 slogans. So we have to start putting someone in jail. You can't allow this chaos in society. You know, we the people have rights. every time I meet a politician, they say, why are you here? I say, I just represent we the people. And I saw in the Declaration of Independence that I have a right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And you're not protecting my life, liberty, or pursuit of happiness. I'm not happy. I have rights. It says it in the document. When are you going to protect my life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness? So, yes, the bad guys do whatever bad guys do, but good guys have to start doing a better job. So I created a little joke about this, that evil people are good at being evil. Good people are bad at being good. So we have to be better at being good, because they're always going to be good at being evil. So we have to step up our games. We have to do much better.
But
Yes?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the role of academia. Okay, because this is
Shlomo?
forum. Yes, yes. And we have witnessed, especially in the U.S., right? I cannot see this because what was going on in the universities, right? And also, I think the academia in Israel is also has a particular trend. Now, this is the next generation of politicians, educators, and I'm not speaking about the tech sciences. I'm thinking about humanities, so social sciences. So, how do you penetrate there? Because you wouldn't call them green, you wouldn't call them red. They practice the ideology, they mix it very well together. And so,
we're totally blue and red.
Blue and
Totally.
red, exactly.
Well,
They're purple. Blue
Yes,
and red.
yes.
They're a combination.
this-
I have an expression, which I'll tell you, that tell me any problem you can think of, and President Trump can fix it in 5 minutes. Now, President Trump doesn't know that he can fix it in 5 minutes, because President Trump has 1,587 problems that he has to get involved with, and he needs the staff to bring issue 1,427 to his attention. He thinks about it for 2 minutes, and then he says, oh, fire this person, cut off their funding, put them in jail. So he's very good when the issue gets up to him. See? So now Netanyahu has the same issue. Who's financing the universities? In America, federal government finances about 50% of a university. In Israel, I'll guess it's 90%.
Yeah.
So all Netanyahu has to do is say, remember me, I'm financing 90% of your budget, and your faculty is 98% reds, greens, or blues. I'm not tolerating that. I want affirmative action for professors who are normal. And you must have 50% of your professors who are normal. You know what the definition of normal is? Anyone who agrees with me. So he said they have to be normal or you get no money. Now, the easy way to do it, and Trump started this, but he didn't follow through enough, is you should say to you, Trump or Netanyahu, you should say, we're going to reform your corrupt university. There's 10 things we expect you to do. And we're stopping the money now. If you fix these 10 things in 10 minutes, we will start the money back in 10 minutes. Okay? It's up to you. It's not up to me. Here's 10 things you have to do. As soon as you do that, we start supplying with the money that we used to. If you do not want to do the two things, then you figure out how to do it with your money. So, President of the United States, I tolerate no anti-Semitism, no anti-Christian behavior. You have 5 minutes to think about it, or I cut your funding. Have a nice day.
Well, it all has to go through FBI investigation and stuff, and it's very hard.
By the way,
don't collaborate with that.
only Trump and Netanyahu can fix this mess. It's back to the biblical times. Only Moshe Rabbeinu can stand up and say, Hashem told me to tell you, do this or else.
Actually, in Israel, in the United States, Trump has more
Power than
power, and he is really doing something. As we know, that he cut funds for the university to change the policy, and some of them really already did that, and they take actions because he cut the funds. In Israel, the deep states were very clever during the last decades to take out all the power from the government. They create a structure that limit very much the power of the government to control the money for the university, for example. and everything will be, and even if they have all the power according to the law, the Supreme Court will judge against them. So it's really, and as you said, they have the power. And so in Israel it's very complicated, and it not can be done in 5 minutes.
So it reminds me of a story. About 2 years ago, I went to a conference, and I was a speaker, but the big speaker was Liz Truss. Remember that name? She was the Prime Minister of England.
Yes.
And I immediately went up to her and said, can we spend 10 minutes together, maybe at the end of the day? She said, oh, no problem, no problem. So I spent 10 minutes with her, and I said, what was it like to be Prime Minister of England? Wasn't that exciting? She says to me, she says, do you know how many people I had the right to hire or fire? So I said, well, I did not know about England, but I know in America, the American president, there's 4 million employees, but he can hire about 5,000 employees. She started laughing and she says, I was able to hire 132. I said, 130? You were trying to run a government with 132 of your people? And
against all the deep state.
Yeah.
And the deep state, 99% deep state and 1% you? Yeah, she started laughing. She said, it wasn't easy. I only lasted 2 months.
Yeah.
Yes.
Qatar is such Islamic country. Why did Trump send Witkoff to negotiate for our hostages? Why did Netanyahu also agree to it? Because it's hypocritical. How can they protect our people if they're against Israel, they're against the Jews, they're against our hostages?
It's another example of 2 mistakes that Trump made. One was what you just mentioned, and the other mistake, he forgot to call me.
Yeah.
So now I have a little analogy joke about Steve Witkoff, who is a golfing buddy. Trump loves him because he's a little bit better golfer than Trump. Trump's a good golfer, people tell me, but Witkoff is like a great golfer. For an amateur, he's not a professional. And so
that's why he sent him to the golf?
No, he likes him. You know, surrounding Trump, there's 3 groups of people. There's the America First, which we voted for, let's just say a third. America Alone, isolationists, which we did not vote for, and just friends of Trump, from real estate, from golf. And so 2/3 of the advice that Trump gets is nonsense. No, only 1/3 of the people understand anything. So I create a little analogy for Steve Witkoff. So he's talking to the president, and the president says, Steve, you're the best negotiator ever. I'm really impressed. You buy and sell buildings and apartments and businesses. Boy, it's so impressive, Steve. You're just wonderful. But now I have a special favor for you. You won't believe this, but I got a call from the manager of the Washington Zoo, and all the animals have escaped. I want you to immediately go over to the zoo and negotiate with those animals and convince them that they're better off living in their cages. And pretend that animals in Washington speak English. And then Steve says, Mr. President, I know how to negotiate with human beings. I've never negotiated with animals. So that's exactly why he was the wrong person. Again, he called me, I would have said, send Mike Tyson, my favorite. Send Mike Tyson. Let him negotiate with Qatar.
Or Mayweather.
Yeah, okay. I met him once for 2 seconds. He's very pro-Israel.
Yeah.
Yes.
I read that there's a problem in the U.S. Many in the youth, the younger people, and the Republicans. I'm not talking about the Democrats, the Republicans, the right. They're being influenced by all kinds of CCP propaganda, like TikTok and Qatar money, which university, and they say that for Israel, the support of the next generation is like not going to support Israel almost, or there's a problem there. So that's my first question: like, how big a problem is it, and how do we change it? And the second thing about the war with the communists, with China, considering in 2020 the CCP launched a biological attack on the world and also the West, and they got away with it. They haven't paid anything till this day.
That's right.
And also their war doctrine is, like you said, they have a multiple war like fronts and economic war, but also physical war. And also they have the eye on Taiwan, and also considering Russia is already at war, because I think maybe the war is not only going to be cultural against the communists, also they invest in their military like no other. So I think possibly we could see an all-out war.
Well, we're already in all-front war. We're in World War III according to my definition of war. Remember, 7 definitions of war. So they change every day. One day it's more physical, another day it's more cultural. But we're in World War III, and the difference between World War I and II and World War III is World War I and II, we have a famous expression in America, was over there. We had a famous song, over there, over there. So in an American mind, war is over there. In World War III, what I call World War III, I'm quoting from there was a Beatles song 40 years ago, here, there, and everywhere. So World War III, in my mind, is here, there, and everywhere. So when we talk about universities, I call that World War III. When we talk about young kids being miseducated, I call it World War III. Every issue we discussed, I call World War III. And because the bad guys are managing World War III. We, the good guys, are playing defense. They're playing offense. So I created another little joke analogy. I get on an airplane and I fly to China. And I tell Beijing, and I tell the taxi driver, take me to President Xi. He's promised me 15 minutes, and I have an important meeting with President Xi. So I have a meeting with President Xi, and I explain to him, I say, I'm an analyst, I analyze things, and I'm just going to share my analysis with you. There's reds, greens, and blues, and there's 7 forms of warfare, and if you multiply 3 times 7, it's 21 wars. It's all part of World War III. And then he starts laughing. He says, you came all the way from Florida to tell me this? I'm managing World War III, you idiot. I'm managing the 21 fronts, and you're telling me that there's 20? Have a nice day. Great to meet you. Go back to Florida. So the bad guys know what they're doing. It's the good guys that don't know what they're doing. Yes.
The Chinese wisdom that said if the best way to win a war is before your opponent knows that there is a war.
Right.
So this is what they are doing. And so it's a lot about the awareness that we don't have here. About the freedom of speech, I want to say that people are already in jail for incitement. If you look at England, you see that many are also here. Many people from the right are going to jail for something they said.
Our societies have been penetrated by the reds, the greens, and the blues. So the money, the ideas have penetrated, and it's very easy to buy influence in a democracy. You know, so someone, a professor or a government official, they get paid this amount, and I show up and I say, I'll give you, I'm from China, I'll give you this amount, or Qatar, I'll give you, so I'll tell you a little joke, which is true, true story. I was talking with my 16-year-old granddaughter 8 years ago, so she was 8 years old. We were watching the Olympics, and one of the judges made a bad decision. So our son said, oh, the judge was probably getting paid money from the other team. The 8-year-old could not believe that a judge could get money and change their decision based on money, not based on right or wrong. So she was like traumatized. So she says, Grandpa, how can that be? How can a judge get money and change their decision? So I said, well, I'll give you a little example. Pretend you were the judge, and I give you $500 to change your decision. She said, Grandpa, I told you, you cannot change a decision based on money. I said, well, pretend that I give you $5,000. You're only 8 years old. I'm going to give you $5,000. Grandpa, I told you, you cannot change your decision. So then I said, well, what if I give you $5 million to change it? She goes, Grandpa, I told you. And then she stops. And she looks at me and says, Grandpa, it's complicated.
You just corrupted your granddaughter.
So that's a microcosm of the world. Our societies have been corrupted by that little true story. I call it a joke. It wasn't a joke. It was a true story. And yes.
I think the problem with all these analogies is, and I hear it a lot in America, these are the good guys and the bad guys. In the real world, it doesn't work. It doesn't work like this. There's not the good guys or the bad guys.
But they don't have shirts. It doesn't say good.
Everybody, every society has dumb people, have smart people. Even Americans have bad people. It's too simple just to say we are the good, they are the bad. It doesn't work like this.
It's complicated.
It's never like, oh, we are the good, these are the bad. No, every person is struggling for the good. Every person. There's not just
every person.
this is bad, this is good. It's too childish.
In my speeches, everything is good and evil. Because my average speech is 10 minutes. So when I meet a politician, I only get 10 minutes or 5 minutes. So I have to give a 1 hour speech in 5 minutes. So I do not have time to talk about, I can talk about black and white, not gray. So you could say, yes, but I'm purposely simplistic. And life is not that much more complicated. When you, again, go back into Torah times, go back to what I started with. Do you believe in the 10 Commandments or not?
Yes, but in the people themselves, there were criminals, there were punishments. It's not, these are the good people, these are the bad people. It doesn't exist, not even in Torah times. They had judges because even in the family they had to make decisions. Everything was, there's
Their theory are much evil and worse than you can imagine. So, and it's not that. If you're with that 8th of October, there was a phone call published in Israeli media about a guy, one of the Nochba, that called his parents to tell them that he's butchered and to do this. And if you hear him in the phone, he is in ecstasy. And if you want to learn what's going on to be in Europe, look what happened here in the Oslo Accord. Because this is the first step that Europe and the United States is going now.
Western society is fighting for its life right now.
Now.
Yeah. So my argument is we have to make our final stand. Pretend that we're going to get taken over by the Reds, the Greens, and the Blues. Okay, they're going to kill everyone. You think there's been a lot of deaths now? There'll be 1 billion or 2 billion deaths. Okay, if we do nothing, the Reds, the Greens, and Blues will take over. The Christians will all be dead in Europe. There'll be 400 million dead Christians. I don't want that. They're going to kill all the Christians in Africa. I don't want that. They're then going to move from Africa to Latin America, kill all the Christians. Then they're going to come up to America and kill all the Christians. And you'll have a world where there will be no yellows, no whites. In my term, whites I call the isolationists for the surrender flag. No yellows for the rule, what I call for the rule of law, the sunlight of Western civilization. And the world will be taken over by criminal organizations. Now, we have a time in history when the world was taken over by criminal organizations, and that was one day before the Torah. If I were talking to you one day before the Torah was delivered, 3,300 years ago on Mount Sinai, and you said to me, okay, Ken, describe the world. I would say, well, there's pretend 100 different countries or nationalities. They're all run by criminal organizations. There's no rule of law. The dictator makes all the rules of law, and everyone is a slave. That was normal. Then the Jews come up and say, no, individuals have rights. I don't care that you're the king. Doesn't matter. Everyone here has rights. Rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Now, the Torah did not use those words, but you had rights in the 10 Commandments. You had rights to not be killed, for someone to not steal your property. And so that's why there's so much anti-Semitism, because when you have a world then and now run by criminals, and the Jews stand up and say, oh, there's a rule of law, I think individuals have rights. All the criminals running all the countries, by the way, there's 193 countries, 180 are run by criminal organizations. So the world is almost similar to it was in biblical times.
So what can you expect from the UN, which is just...
Well, the UN is a criminal organization because 180 of the 193 countries are run by criminal organizations.
Yeah, this
right.
is what is
So, but what I'm saying is we have to fight. We either fight with bullets or fight with words. But we cannot just let the pagans take over. Yeah. I mean, this is we would be refuting 3,300 years of Judeo-Christian society to say, let's go back into time and become pagans again. Now, it's particularly worrisome to me is that if the pagans take over, particularly the Greens, and they force us to have 4 wives. I love my wife so much. I want to be with her every day and every night. I don't want to spend the other 3 nights with somebody else. So you see how I'm so petrified.
Give her a break once in a while.
You have 4 more, like her.
They can do the cooking and the cleaning.
Exactly.
Okay, it's not so bad. Okay, any last question?
If you please, to say a few words to our people who managed to get our government to withdraw from the regulation of the World Health Organization.
Okay.
Yes.
So everything the Reds, the Greens, and the Blues do is evil. Okay.
Right.
Again, to remind you, evil is they reject the 10 Commandments and they reject life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Those are my 2 definitions of evil. So the World Health Organization is part of the UN, which is evil, and it's controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, which is evil. So therefore, you do not want to listen to anything that the UN or World Health Organization has to say, because their design is to hurt you. Their not design is to help you.
And it's about Hamas as well.
Yeah.
So you've got the red, the green.
Right. So we saw this in COVID, when the Chinese told the World Health Organization, tell everybody in the world to stop working. Okay, so every economy went like this. So President Trump thought about it for a month, and he said, basically, are we crazy? Just because someone's going to get the flu? No one's going to work in our economy is going. The corporations will have 80% unemployment. We went up to like 20% unemployment for a month, but that was advice from the World Health Organization, getting the advice from the Chinese Communist Party that was trying to destroy our economy. So President Trump said, "We're out of here. We're out of the world." So Israel has to get out of the World Health Organization as fast as possible. So I'll just stop
One more thing.
Yes, and everyone sign up for my website, savethewest.com. You'll learn how to save Western civilization.
And Gali, thank you. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Gali.